From beautiful downtown Milwaukee, the mecca of mythicism, it's the Mythicist Milwaukee Show, keeping the all-seeing eye of Horus on the secular movement. Produced weekly by Mythicist Milwaukee and sponsored by Atheist Community of Milwaukee, Kenosha Racine Atheists and Free Thinkers, and King's Tower Productions. The Mythicist Milwaukee Show highlights movers and shakers from the global secular movement and explores the mythic origins of today's major religions. From beautiful downtown Milwaukee, the mecca of mythicism, it's the Mythicist Milwaukee Show, keeping the all-seeing eye of Horus on the secular movement. Produced weekly by Mythicist Milwaukee and sponsored by Atheist Community of Milwaukee, Kenosha Racine Atheists and Free Thinkers, and King's Tower Productions. The Mythicist Milwaukee Show highlights movers and shakers from the global secular movement and explores the mythic origins of today's major religions. Welcome back, ladies and transgendermen. I'm your host, Rob Moore, the duly designated deacon of doubt in these parts and the secularists. You can find me at Robinero on Twitter. That's just like it sounds, Robanero. My co-pilot, in fact, is not Jesus. It's Brian Edward. What's going on, Brian?
Trying to get back to the land of the living after a great party last night with Richard Carrier and the rest of the Mythicist Milwaukee team.
You are the friar of free thought, and as such, you in fact play host to a number of social events that we are lucky to be able to attend.
That's right,
and enjoy. And another well done job there. Thanks for doing that. And last night was a fun meet and greet with Richard Carrier, Dr. Richard Carrier, the verbose and prolific author and theologian and New Testament scholar who is a leading mythicist, as we all know. Yeah. He's going to be on the Eric Andre show tonight. What do you know about that?
Wow. I know that it's going to go sideways. I mean, Eric Andre plus Richard Carrier, you don't prepare for this. If you've seen Eric Andre, you truly don't know what's coming.
I have. I think it's because I'm 100 years old. I maybe don't quite get it, but it's outrageous. It's off the wall. It's
more unpredictable than what comes out of Donald Trump's mouth.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. And if anyone's equipped to dance in that style, it's a Richard Carrier, don't you think?
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Quick on your feet. You got about, as you mentioned before, you need to get about 6 seconds maybe before he changes the subject.
I think 6
react.
milliseconds.
Okay,
yeah, not much.
Nanoseconds. Wacky stuff, and one in a long line of comedians that we find ourselves hooked up with, and today no exception, as we do every week here at the podcast. You and I are here to popularize and demonstrate, in fact, the mythinary position. But we have with us another comedian today, Ian Harris, who we last saw at the Reason Rally, and has graciously agreed to join us for 45 minutes or so here on the Mythicist Milwaukee Show. Welcome, Ian. Are you there?
I'm here. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for joining us. You are a handsome bald man, which I always appreciate.
He does.
I always like that.
Yeah, I remember being the bald guy with glasses was like the strange look. Now I live in LA. I run into like 20 of me a day.
Well, as
like what happened?
As Patrick Stewart says, it just never goes out of style. You can wake up, it's perfect again.
Yeah, I think Patrick Stewart is like sexiest man in like 1999 or something.
No mercy, I know.
Along with Julia Roberts on the female side.
I know I had a man crush on a Captain Picard now and again, the leotard. Make it so, number one. Make it so. Engage.
Right.
Good stuff. So, Ian, you just got off stage from a live event. What's going on? You with our buddy Seth Andrews. What are you doing today?
Yeah, we're doing a fundraiser and a little talk for the Humanist Fellowship of San Diego. Funny enough, in a comedy club, I do a bunch of fundraisers, and I've done them for the Humanist group here before. So they were looking for a place, and I hooked them up with the comedy club, and we did an 11 a.m. show in in a comedy club. Myself, I did 45 minutes of comedy, and then Seth did his speech, his presentation, which was really awesome. And it was really fun. It was bizarre doing comedy at 11 a.m. in a comedy club. It was cool.
All right. Now, tell us a little bit about our buddy Seth. He's got it all going on. He's tall, he's handsome, he's got the golden voice. Is he actually funny too? Did he do comedy, or was it a different presentation?
It was funny, but it was a presentation. It had slides, and it was kind of a presentation of a story that he had, like a journey of him, being formerly, fundamentalist Christian, and a friend of his coming out gay and getting this mysterious letter. It started out with him getting a mysterious letter in the package, a little mysterious letter package, whatever, in the mail, and trying to figure out what it was, and then eventually figuring out that it came from his friend. And then he backtracked and told the story of his good friend who came out to him gay when he was still very religious, and how that helped him get over his. He realized he was a bigot, and that kind of helped him get over his, started him on his way to, I guess, becoming an atheist. It was, it was really cool, and it was very funny. He had a lot of funny moments, and he played some other stuff. He played some other clips from, the little redneck and a few different things to demonstrate his point. And it was very good. It was very, very good.
So by mysterious letter, you mean that it was anonymous? It was from his friend anonymous, right? It didn't have anthrax in it.
Yeah, that's kind of the joke. I mean, I don't hate to give away his stuff if anybody sees it, but that's the whole thing. Is he gets this mysterious letter where it's like predated from 16 years ago, from England, with no return address, not signed by anybody, and it's with these letter, and it's got these mysterious, 2 pages of a manuscript in there, and this letter that's saying these will be worth something someday, and him trying to figure out what the hell it is, and at the same time, him thinking, well, shoot, what I do, could this be anthrax?
Nice. Glued together with magazine letters, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then later on he figures out it was all a goof that his friend put together. I think there's a company that does this sort of thing, and it was all like a practical joke kind of a thing with his friend. And he, getting packages in the mail for a while before you finally uncover what the mystery is. It's all just this funny goof practical joke thing. But yeah, how it was cool how it fueled his point was how it fueled his how his relationship wouldn't have been this great relationship had he rejected his friend for being gay 20 years ago.
Tell us about you now. You're a comedian, an atheist comedian. Which comes first, and do you get to do it full time? Are you on to the next city now, next comedy event tonight, or do you have to have a real job too?
No, this is my. I mean, I have a hobby that takes up 90% of my time, and that's I train MMA fighters. And I take most of that takes up probably a huge chunk, at least 50% of my time. And, but yeah, I mean, I've been a comedian for 24 years, and I've been an atheist for 45 years, but, so I was born, I've always been an atheist, and I've been a comedian since I was, old enough to get on stage, but I didn't put the two together till about, specifically, I've always done jokes about being an atheist or a skeptic, but I've never made that my thing until about 6 years ago. I just decided that I only wanted to do comedy that I enjoy, instead of talking about relationships and all the other stuff that every other comedian talks about. So I started about 5.5, 6 years ago. I just started doing comedy that was fueled by skepticism with a heavy atheist slant on it, and just been doing that ever since. But because of that, I can't do what I used to do, which was, I used to do 40, 50 weeks a year on the road, but I can't do that anymore because comedy clubs don't want 45 minutes of atheism on their stage. So I have to do a completely different type of thing now. Now I do theaters, and I do my own self-produced shows, and I do a lot of conventions, and I just did Dragon Con. I was in at Dragon Con, the Reason Rally. I do a lot of those kind of things now, and then my own self-produced shows, and it's cool. It's better, but it's a lot more work. I have to put together a lot of time to do like a Friday and Saturday somewhere.
Right. Yeah, but you can also then tailor that. The atheist community is going to be, the target humor is going to be a little bit different. Like I was watching your bit on Ray Comfort, and I think that was just regular audience. And I think you had to kind of explain this, whereas like the Ray Comfort, the atheist audience would hit it. And man, do you do his voice well. I gotta hear you do Ray Comfort. I mean, it was so good.
Right. Isn't it just generic Australian?
It fools most Americans probably if it's a good one.
It might. It really sounded like Ray Comfort. I mean, you were very passionate about your love for bananas.
The banana.
Bananas. Oh yeah, bananas. Yeah, that's funny though that he actually was at the Reason rally, and people were getting pictures with him, and he was doing his what's his thing? God's not dead or something like that. He had the atheist delusion. That's his
little tagline.
When he had a little 5-year-old, he had cute 5-year-old girls, being passing out his new disc. Like, I mean, what are you going to say to some 5-year-old cute girl that says, "Here, take this"? No.
Somebody licked his face. Who did we talk to that licked his face? Cog disc guys. Who was it?
Oh my gosh.
The scathing atheist guys. One of them filmed and one of them licked his face when he wasn't expecting it.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So we knew.
Yeah, I think you know what's weird about. Did you meet him? Have you ever met him?
No, we were there too, and I didn't. We were on stage the whole time. I never even saw the show.
Ray Comfort he argued with Penn Jillette outside of the hotel, so we watched that.
You guys watched that?
Oh, really?
I wasn't there for that.
Wow, that would have been gold. The funny thing about him is I kind of feel like it's really hard to tell with him if he even believes. I mean, I know he believes, I guess, but
I was going to ask you.
It's a weird thing. I've seen him do the same argument over and over and over, and people have explained it to him over and over and over. Like he'll give his the banana, blah blah blah, whatever. He'll do his thing, and then people will explain. Well, this is why the banana has evolved to this, and this is it's a clone. They'll do all the explanation, whether it's evolution or whatever his arguments are. They've been explained to him thoroughly multiple times, and I know that shouldn't necessarily make him not believe in God or change his belief. But when every time he makes the same argument, he props up the same straw man and it's been explained to him over and over, I kind of start thinking, okay, this is a shtick.
Right.
This is just something he does to make money. And he knows that if he keeps saying the same thing and then tearing it down and, evolution, I didn't come from a monkey. Well, no, you can explain over and over. No one said that's how evolution works. And then the next week he's saying the exact same thing again. And it's like, this guy can't really believe this. It's got to be a scam.
I wondered if and I always ask about these guys. Do you think that there's any of them that really believe this crap, or are they all just charlatans, shameless, bilking charlatans?
It's hard to believe. It's hard to say because, my mom. I'm a skeptic. People find this funny. My mom is a psychic in the sense that I don't believe my mom is a psychic, but my mom makes part of her living and has always been a self-proclaimed psychic since before I was born. So that's always been my mom's thing. She's a psychic and that's what she does. But the thing is that my mom really genuinely believes it, and she's not a dumb person. She's actually very smart and she's fairly educated, but she believes it for whatever reason. And she actually went to do one of those psychic hotlines, like she got a job as 1-900, psychic or whatever those things are, a Psychic Friends Network and one of those deals. Yeah. And she quit because she was like, can you believe they're trying to scam people? Like,
she was shocked.
Well, because not everybody is a real psychic like her.
Me a script. Exactly. She was like, they're giving me a script that I have to do in this whole thing. She goes, this is crazy. Why? I mean, this is wrong. Like she couldn't believe it. She was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not pretending I'm not going to put on this fake thing and do this scripted cold reading thing. She goes, that's not what I do. And they want me to drag them on longer and get more money out of them. She's like, that's not what I'm here for. And it's just funny because she really believes,
honest psychic,
ethical psychic,
ethical psychic.
Exactly. And so it's hard to tell when you deal with these, religious nuts or anybody who believes in just crazy nonsense. It's hard to believe that they actually believe it, but there are a lot to do. But that's why, when someone explains the argument to someone like Ray Comfort and over and over and over, and then he continues to prop up the same argument, you go, all right, this has got to be a scam. Like there's no way he can continue. continue with the same argument.
I think I have the reason why. I think it's directly tied to your identity. If he gives this up, he can no longer say, I'm a Christian. I mean, it's difficult. I used to be more right-wing. I definitely identified as a Republican. I could not laugh at Republican jokes, even if they're funny. It took me a while to get rid of that identity. Now I can laugh at everybody. I think that's what it is, and you have to defend it. Even though you don't really believe it, it's just you'll lose that identity.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I know what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense.
Right,
You
go
mentioned
for it.
being a lifelong atheist, and we always get at people's backgrounds here. Your mom was a psychic. You were a lifelong atheist. Tell us more about your a-religious background.
Well, on my dad's side, my dad was an atheist. In his day and time, it wasn't even a word or an issue that anybody brought up. My grandfather, my grandfather was an atheist too. Weird. My grandfather came from a different time. They're funny enough. He's got a Native American, like half Native American. But my grandfather was kind of grew up in this small town in Colorado, and kind of a racist guy, like just, I guess, a person of his time, but very old school Democrat, where he was, a working class, had a million guns. So he was kind of like, nowadays you would think of him as like, he was racist and he had all these guns and he was a hunter and fisherman, all this kind of stuff. And he would be your typical right-wing Republican, but he was very pro-union, pro-working class, thought that the Republicans were these rich elitist people that were out to squash the working man. And he was a con artist. My grandfather made a living. He was a grifter. He used to hop the trains. So he was like a semi-professional, if you will, con artist. So he saw through all the garbage of religion. So my grandfather was an atheist, nearly 100 years ago, 80 years ago, he was an atheist. And my dad was brought up with that. And my grandmother, who my grandparents were divorced, my grandmother's this very liberal, into the arts, was a singer, was an actress. So my dad grew up with this, like, his mother, who was this really cool, liberal, hippie type, and way progressive for her time. And my grandfather was this hardcore, staunch, working class Democrat who was an atheist. So my dad just kind of grew up with this, inadvertent secular upbringing, even though back then there was no, that wasn't a thing. My mom was her parents are directly from Ireland, Scotland. So she was brought up straight Irish Catholic, but hated it. Didn't like the oppression behind it, and was, they moved to, my mom and my dad moved from Colorado to Santa Cruz in like the 60s, 70s. So they were in Santa Cruz, California, this hippie liberal place at the height of all that stuff. So my mom, it was a big New Age type person. So she's got the psychic stuff, and she's got, a vaguely Hindu religion.
Right. I was just going to get down at the ashram.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. That's where that's exactly my mom's thing is she's basically Hindu, but if you ask her, she wouldn't say she's Hindu, but she's been to India. She does all that sort of stuff. So I grew up with this mom who's a psychic with this new agey ideas, and a dad who thinks it's all a bunch of bullshit and doesn't really care about any of that stuff. I remember the first time I actually stepped inside of a church, I think I was probably 19.
Oh, wow.
And I was dating a girl who's now my wife, whose father was priest. So they were very Catholic. So I went to church with them on a midnight mass or something like that during a holiday because they wanted me to go. And I said, sure, I don't really care. I'll go. But
Probably
before that,
Christmas.
I remember when I was 7 years old, I was staying over at a friend's house, and they were going, I called my dad. I said, hey, can you bring me over some nice clothes? We're going to church in the morning. And my dad's response was, no, don't worry about it. I'll rescue you before then.
Conversely, when I was 19 was probably the last time I was in a church, not the first time.
Oh, it's funny. Yeah. I mean, it was weird. Like they asked me, they said, you want to, my girlfriend at the time was not really religious, and she's an atheist like me now, but she was still kind of religious, had the God belief, but didn't associate with any of the Catholicism or any of that kind of stuff. Didn't like the feel of it. Didn't like a lot of the stuff that was going on, and felt really awkward about it and was questioning it. But she still had that for a few years, that weight of, well, yeah, I'm Catholic and my family's Catholic. So I went to this mass, and I remember they asked me, do you want to go to, it was either Easter or Christmas or something, and they did some sort of mass, and they said, oh, will you go? And I said, I have no problem going. I said, but isn't that disrespectful to you guys that I'm going to be in there mocking you in my brain?
Right.
Because I'm going to think it's ridiculous, right? And my girlfriend and my wife now was like, yeah, don't worry about it. But I really think honestly that her dad and her some of her relatives probably thought, oh, he's finally going to get into a church and he's going to see the light.
Yes, that's the way it's viewed.
It was weird, and I'm like, so I went and I said, I go, man, I thought this would be more blasphemous for me to go than for me just to bow out and not go with you guys. But no, they were like, no, go, it's great, it'll be fun.
No,
and and I went a couple times with him just to be nice and but I always felt that so weird. Oh, really, you want me to go there? You know what I do, right? You know my thing, and. Okay, if you want me to go, I'll go and laugh at you guys in my head. That's cool.
So you grew up a California guy?
Yeah, born and raised in Santa Cruz, California.
Nice.
You know what's funny? It's like going to Catholic church. I still will kind of have to go sometimes. I just to kind of keep the peace with the parents. And it's interesting to see how many like non-believers or at least atheists or people are in there, because there's a new thing when you go up to communion. You would normally get the host. You can't do that unless you're confirmed, right? You're not allowed to eat the host. So, but it's weird to sit in the thing. You're just labeled. So everybody goes up these days, and you put your hands in an X in front of the priest, and he kind of gives you a blessing, and then you walk away. So it's like, here, you can just count how many. You see this guy walking up, I'll bet he puts the X up.
Isn't that like having a yellow star on your shirt or something? What the hell is that, man?
It's so weird. Because if you're sitting in the pew, and you don't go up, right? And this is what they would do. Everyone looks at you. What? So you're either A, not Catholic, or B, you're in a state of mortal sin. Who did you sleep with last night? That's what it is. If you're in a state of mortal sin, you can't have it either.
What?
So they've done this. So now you go up, you put up the X, it's all good.
Wow.
I know. It's so weird. And people are like, it's just funny. And it gets weirder and weirder every time I go.
And I've never had to deal with any with any of that kind of stuff, like that sort of stuff. I don't know. I just even the whole idea of the following is weird. And not only am I an atheist, I'm also very one of the I'm an '80s punk rock kid from Northern California. So it's like any sort of following or conformity really throws me off. Even in atheist stuff, where I'm like, well, you want me to do the same thing as get up and sing? No, I don't think I'm going to do that. You know what I mean? That's what throws me off.
It's been a phenomenon lately. I think that the atheist community has been able to kind of throw that aside, because I think that's a common thought, a common feeling among a lot of free thinkers is that we don't want to conform, and it's been an issue that's quite frankly held secularism back in the country, the herding of cats kind of thing. Do you see a change there? Are you feel like you're an activist? Are you part of a coalescent movement?
Yes and no. Like here's the thing. I've hosted or spoken at multiple Sunday assemblies.
Okay.
You guys know the Sunday Assembly?
Yeah, with that. That's interesting.
So they asked me to do. I hosted the biggest one. I think it was the biggest one ever in L.A. It was the third one they did ever here in Los Angeles. I'm sure that obviously biggest here, not in elsewhere, like in England or wherever it started. But they did one here in LA, and it got covered by NPR. So there was like 380 people there, and I hosted it. And then after that, I've hosted a couple in San Diego. I hosted one at the University of Indiana. I've hosted them San Jose, several places, or spoken or whatever. And the thing is, I enjoy it. It's cool. To me, it's just like talking in front of a bunch of atheists. I get to do some comedy. But I personally won't go to those, because I went to one on my own. The first one, before they asked me to host it, I wanted to see what it was like. So I went to one to watch it. And I took my wife, and she was like, it freaked her out. She goes, I don't like this. It reminds me of church.
Right.
And I don't freaking like church. So that's why I don't go. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't bring up any negative memories to me. It doesn't bother me. But I have this weird idea. For me, when they're like, oh, okay, everybody stand up and sing. And I'm like, no, I'll stand up and sing if I want to freaking stand up and sing. Like, don't tell me to stand up and sing. If I like the song, So I get this weird kind of, I don't like this hurting of, I think it's great for the community. And I think that's what atheism and secularism, whatever you want to call, I think that's what we lack. Is we're a great community. Everybody wants to help. Everybody wants to give to charity. Some of the nicest, most genuine, and most generous people I've ever met are atheists and agnostics and humanists and whatever you want to call yourself. But I feel that we don't have that community. And once we do get that community, we break off to where it's like, okay, well, I'm an atheist feminist, or I'm an atheist, skeptic, or I'm a humanist, and we break off into these little factions. And I just feel that that's part of our nature. I wish we were more a community, but I'm guilty of it because I don't want to go to a freaking atheist church myself, you know?
Well, and that's the atheist church thing is apt, but it also that the fact that it turns off you and other people you know is the same thing that turns on other people who do miss that aspect of church. And that's why it succeeds in California and not in a place like Milwaukee where no one could get one started because people here really don't want to do that. But in that, the kind of new age atmosphere supports it a little bit more. There are people who miss that community, ritual, singing together, holding hands, and I think that's what.
Remember to get your tickets for Misinformation Conference 3 featuring the big debate between Robert Price and Bart Ehrman coming up on October 21st at historic Turner Hall in downtown Milwaukee.
At least
Mythicist Milwaukee would like to thank the sponsors of Misinformation Conference 3,
common goals,
Freedom from Religion Foundation, the Sophia Wolf Quadracci Memorial Fund for Stem Cell Research,
I do.
Edwin Herbert Author of Mythos Christos,
I think the issue
Atheist Alliance of America, Atheist Republic, Godless Engineer,
I remember doing
Kenosha Racine, Atheists and Free Thinkers,
it might have been CFI,
Atheist Community of Milwaukee, and Polaris
Summit or something like that. But I remember there was a big kind of a rift in the whole convention because there were the humanist / atheist side didn't like all the there were a lot of people that were not skeptics necessarily, like when it came to other stuff, science issues like GMOs or chemtrails or some kind of ghosts or whatever other thing, they were really turned off by that because they may have bought into that. They may have those beliefs. They're not religious, but they have some other sort of belief. They might be anti-vaxxers or something like that the skeptic community is really harsh on. Yeah. The skeptic community was getting sick and tired of every other talk being about religion. And they're like, yes, we don't like religion either, but can we talk about something else for once? So there was kind of a rift there. But then also you have in this community, because we have such thoughtful, awesome people, we get a lot of the social justice warrior types, yes, which creates a lot of political correctness. So then you have people who want to go, no, fuck religion. Can I say fuck religion?
Sure. You can.
There's that group, that Firebrand, that like, we don't want to say fuck religion. And then you have the people that are like, well, let's not be mean to religious people, and then you have people that are, then you have the people who have their other cause. They infuse, like I said. I mean, there's whether it could be a race thing, it could be a black non-believer, it could be a feminist thing, it could be a skeptic thing. Like, I'm a non-believer and I also really need to do something about raising awareness of the GMO issue or whatever. And I think what happens is that into it. So what happens when the people that come that just want to get away from religion, they find that all of a sudden there's a group where they have to be an atheist feminist, or they have to be an atheist skeptic, or they have to be an atheist. And there's these little factions that people don't. I don't think people realize that they're doing it, but they make one issue about all the issues. And I do it myself, where I go, oh, everybody who's an atheist must have gotten here through skepticism and through scientific inquiry. So everybody must think like me. And if you're an atheist, you must have the same beliefs as me. And then I find out, no, that's not always the case. And I think we have, because atheism isn't a belief, it's a lack of a belief. So what happens is we start coming up with other things that we believe in to put on the atheism as a belief, as a positive belief. Yes, I don't believe in God, but I also believe this thing and this thing and this thing. And we had that with humanism, and then we had atheism plus, and there were the Brights, and there were all these different people that were atheists, but we also do this charitable thing. And I think it's settling down a little bit. But there was a few years ago, it was kind of bad. Like I felt like you go to these conventions, which I do a lot of, and there were like just these different groups where it was like, oh, that was that group. We're not going to invite this guy because he said something that's not politically correct. And, you know, it's like, really, you're not going to invite a former Muslim who's now anti-Muslim, or you're not going to invite Richard Dawkins because he said something that you thought was a little offensive. You know, it's like part of the same group here. We can't start fighting amongst each other. We have to, you know, certain things and hear the perspective. If we're free thinkers, then we need to think freely, and we need to have that argument. We can't start shutting people out and go, oh, I think Richard Dawkins is great on this, but he's completely off base on this, so let's just not let him speak. Well, no, let's have a discussion about it. And isn't that what we espouse, is that we are about free thinking and open discussion and rational thought. And you know, I just think that's the one thing that plagues us sometimes, you know.
Yeah, and it's been well looked at in recent times. So you bring up a good point.
Well, it seems like there's a certain part, you know, the free inquiry that is trying to be blocked, and take somebody like the Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, they block free inquiry. I mean, if you start to, they say, don't even go down that road, and if you do and you mention it out loud, out you can go. And I think it's the same groups of which some people call the regressive left, the illiberal left, the authoritarian left, whatever you want to call it, that you're not allowed free inquiry, or you get called a bigot, or
the SJWs,
or a sexist or a racist or whatever. But what can you do? I mean, do you talk about that? Have you ever, like, how do you stay united? You know, when you do have a balkanized group, you know, some people got to atheism through conspiracy theory, right? Some through kind of a radical feminism per se, or whatever. But what do you do when atheist tries to stop free inquiry?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the problem is I think that, you know, there's a lot of people who come to atheism not through rational discourse. They come to it through, a lot of times, and I would say that that's the wrong way to come to it. I'm excited that they're atheists and they let go of their belief. I think it's a lot of people come to it the same way they come to religion, with an irrational response. You know, and I hear that from people who go, Kirk Cameron says that. I used to be an atheist, doing drugs.
Right.
And you know, and now I can't. No, you were never an atheist. You may have. I used to be an atheist. I hated God. Well, you can't be an atheist because you can't.
Right.
You can't hate something that you don't believe in. But I think there are people that come to it through an emotional. They're religious, and then somebody dies, and they go, "God, there must not be a God."
That's a good point. I never thought about that. We tend to assume that atheists are rational and logical,
right.
and a lot of times it isn't. It's just a knee jerk. Maybe just religion never worked for me. So, there is no God, or I hate God, and I'm an atheist.
Yes, we are free to be as incompetent as any fundamentalist.
We certainly are. Remember to get your tickets for Myth Information Conference 3, featuring the big debate between Robert Price and Bart Ehrman, coming up on October 21st at historic Turner Hall in downtown Milwaukee. Mythicist Milwaukee would like to thank the sponsors of Myth Information Conference 3, Freedom from Religion Foundation, Sophia Wolf Quadracci Memorial Fund for Stem Cell Research, Edwin Herbert, author of Mythos Christos, Atheist Alliance of America, Atheist Republic, Godless Engineer, Kenosha Racine Atheists and Freethinkers, Atheist Community of Milwaukee, and Polaris Financial. Get your tickets now at mythicistmilwaukee.com. So where do you fall on the spectrum then? Are you a fuck religion guy, or are you one of these guys who thinks we ought to be nice to religious people? What do you think about that?
This is going to sound weird. I'm both. I think religion is horrible. I think for the most part it does more harm than good. I get the argument that it doesn't. I know there are people. I do know people that would be. That I'm glad they have religion, because they would be complete psychopaths if they didn't have it. Well, I would argue that they are psychopaths, but they have to keep themselves in line by believing in nonsense. And for that, I think that's cool. And I don't have a problem with your right to do it. You can believe whatever the hell you want to believe. You can be a racist KKK. As long as you're not harming anybody else, I don't care. If you want to do that, and I won't go up and like knock on your door and start bashing you, but if you come to me and start talking to me about it, I usually go, look, it's probably not best you go down that road with me. And if you persist, then the gloves come off. If I'm doing my thing, if I'm doing comedy, I'm going to do what I do, and I'm going to talk the way I talk, and I'm on social media, I'm going to post what I post. I'm going to do what I believe and what I like doing, and if you have a problem with it, that's your problem. But I'm not going to go out and try to convert people any other way other than here's my open forum, here's what I talk about. If you like what I have to say, great. Yeah. If you don't, then no big deal. So I'm kind of a live and let live guy, but that goes both ways. I'm going to do what I do,
right?
And you have to let me do what I do. And if you don't want to, then all gloves are off. We're gonna go.
Yeah, so certain religions don't allow for that, right? I mean, they will demand respect from non-believers into the bargain. I mean, the obvious example is drawing Muhammad. It's not prohibited just for Muslims not to draw Muhammad. It's expected that non-believers also do not do this. And that's the thing, that is absolutely affecting me.
You're infidel.
Right? Behead those that insult Islam. I mean, this is in London. This is in Toronto. Up come the placards.
Well, I mean, and that's what I just don't get about the thing I really don't get, the thing that just blows my mind repeatedly is the flag-waving religious right that say they're constitutionalists, the Fox News people that talk about, and I hear them talk about religious freedom, and I just don't understand how they don't get that what they want is not religious freedom. They want the exact opposite of religious freedom. These laws in Indiana where you can't whatever, but where you can discriminate against people, or the Hobby Lobby thing, or to me it's like that is not religious freedom. That's religious privilege. You don't want anyone to do anything on their time that goes against your belief, even if it doesn't affect you. It's like the marriage equality laws. It does not affect you at all. It has nothing to do with you. Two gay people get married. It has zero to do with you. But you claim religious persecution that two people that have nothing to do with you are getting married, and somehow that violates your religion that they don't believe. And they'll scream and yell, "We need religious freedom, First Amendment." And you're like, what? That's what I don't get. How do they even not understand this basic thing that if you or with Muslims, they don't want Muslims to do this and all these different things, but they want that same privilege afforded to them for their Christianity, and they'll claim the First Amendment. And you're like, no, you're absolutely violating. You're pissing on the First Amendment with what you're doing and calling it religious freedom, and they just don't get it. Like I had a friend who was talking about the Pledge of Allegiance years ago, and I said, why should my daughter have to say this? It's ridiculous. And he said, well, it'll be fine. Tell her to sit down. And I go, oh, so you're telling me a kindergartner has to make a political statement and doesn't even know what she's talking about, has to sit down and take a stand as a 5-year-old? Are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, help her build character.
Yeah, it's not taking a stand. Of course, it's indoctrination to force kids to conform to that kind of patriotism.
And why does my kid need to build character? Why can't your kid build character? I mean, the bottom line is saying under God, not saying it doesn't affect anybody. Saying it affects people who don't believe it, and that's factual. It's not even debatable. Yet the majority of people will debate the other way around and go, well, I want my kids to say it, so I'm going to force your kids to say it. Well, your kids can say it on their own time. No, that's not how I want it to be. Well, who cares how you want it to be? I don't get it, because if it was under Allah or one nation under his almighty Prince of Darkness, Satan, they'd be screaming up and down, religious freedom.
Yeah.
And they just don't get it when they have zero empathy. They just don't seem to get it when it doesn't affect them.
And it's super short-sighted to have a law that gives you this religious freedom, right, to discriminate. It only for their own religion, right? What they don't see coming. And if you just look over at London, when we did a podcast with Miriam Namazi, and just look, Sharia courts operating right there, using, piggybacking on the same kind of religious laws. I mean, do you want this in America? It seems like these people tend to be creeping Sharia people anyways. Well, here's how to stop it. No extra benefits for anyone, period.
Right.
It seems silly.
Well, and that's the other thing is funny. The same people. I mean, I see nothing. I see, the Sharia law, and they're gonna bring Muslims get here. They're gonna bring Sharia law to America. I'm like, well, isn't that what you want?
No.
You want Sharia law. You want it. You just don't call it Sharia law. You call it Christian law. But it's the exact same thing. In fact, the Old Testament is the majority of the books in the Old Testament are shared by the three major religions anyway. And that's where these laws come from. Like the same basic concepts and the same some of the exact same literal texts, whether you're Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, are shared. So the same laws that you're so afraid of Muslims pushing on you are the laws that you're trying to push on us, but you just say it comes from a different book. But it's all the same stuff: the anti-gay laws, the all these things that they want are Sharia law. So I don't know what they're bitching about.
Right.
You mentioned that you gave up probably a number of opportunities and made your own future more difficult by becoming an exclusively atheist comedian. I'm wondering, do you feel like you're always preaching to the choir, or do you think you've changed some minds? Do you get feedback saying, you've opened some minds to thoughts that people hadn't had before after they see your show?
Well, I think it's a little of both. I definitely do a lot of shows where would be preaching to the choir. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of people that come to see me because they're coming to see me. But I think that's kind of the case in any form of entertainment or public speaking. If you're AC/DC, you're not getting people who are coming out going, "Whoa, this is interesting. I've never heard this music before." You're getting people who are screaming that your 40-year-old songs and don't really care about the new album. So when I'm talking to atheist skeptic crowds, they're there to see me, and definitely they're on the same page as me. But I also do stuff that is, because like I said, I'm a skeptic. So I may have an atheist crowd or a humanist crowd. I may say something that, I may talk about, I talk about stuff that would be, I have a joke in my act about gluten-free, about people being gluten-free. I have a joke in my act about people driving Priuses, things that we would consider liberal, that I look at, I break those things down just the same way I break other stuff down. So I touch on stuff in my act that might have even piss off my crowd. But I'm just trying to get them to look at things skeptically. And I also get people, I still do regular comedy shows. So I still do get people who, who are there not knowing what they're getting into. And I still have to find a way to bring them along the ride, or, along for the ride. So it's definitely a little bit of both. But I mean, even shows that I self-produce, you'd be amazed at how many people show up. They pay $25. They hear the news, the ad on the radio, or they see the ad in the paper. It tells you exactly what I do, and they still come out. And then afterward, they still come up to me and be like, and start bitching about, did I make fun of their religion? And I'm like, why did you pay for a ticket? Like, did you not know what you were coming to see?
If they admit this, they knew. How do you know that they knew? I mean, they may not have read it. I mean, did they tell you this? Like,
well, I mean, so say I come into, your town. Say I come to Flagstaff, Arizona, and I rent out the Theatricos Theater in Flagstaff, Arizona. The only way you know that there's going to be a comedy show there is if someone tells you, hey, there's a comedy show there, or you see it in the paper. It's not like a comedy club.
Right.
So if you're coming out to the Theatricos Comedy Club or theater on a Friday night, and you're paying $20, $25 to see my show, that's a destination. You didn't stumble on it. So you must have known something. You must have at least known there was comedy there. I mean, you had to somehow say, oh, there's this new thing happening at this place that doesn't normally do this, and I'm going to pay $20 to go see it. And then go and be pissed off at the content? I just don't, but it happens all the time.
Tell us about the MMA thing. How does that affect your the rest of your life? It strikes me that most of those guys are probably religious. They're all like boxers. They give up the glory to God at the end when God has apparently picked them to beat the other guy near to death.
I would be afraid to make a joke about Brock Lesnar, though.
Yeah, right?
I wouldn't do it.
All right.
Got any MMA jokes?
No, yeah, I do have a few. I don't really do my act very much, but it is funny because I do have there is quite a bit of religiosity in all sports, MMA, but MMA is definitely, I would say it's definitely less than, I mean, it would depend on where the fighter comes from. I'm in California, so a lot of the fighters are from California. If I was in Indiana dealing with it, and there was people coming from a wrestling background, and they grew up in the Midwest, they went to, Oklahoma, or they went to, Iowa, and they're wrestlers, probably good chance they come with religious baggage. In California, not necessarily the case. A lot of people come from, traditional martial arts. So you might even have new agey people who at one point were believing in chi power and these other things. But you have all different types. MMA is definitely more cerebral than boxing or wrestling.
Interesting.
Yeah, because it's there's just so much more involved in MMA. You have to know, you have to know Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which takes minimum of 3 to 5 years to even get remotely good at. You have to box, you have to kickbox, you have to know some wrestling, you have to understand strategy. They always refer to it as human chess, especially Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's a human chess match. So there's a lot in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There's a lot of really heady, smart people that are kind of philosophical and really just into the human chess match. Sam Harris actually does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now. There's a few people that do that you'd be surprised by, but it's so you have a lot of different people in the MMA community. There's definitely a lot of being from Brazilians are very religious people, so you definitely have a lot of the religion coming from Brazil, and there's it's weird because I don't everyone in the MMA industry for the most part knows what I'm about. They all know I'm a comedian. Most of them seen what I do. So there's a lot of them who pretty much have a pretty good understanding of who I am, and it's cool. But there's definitely still that, like I said, in any sport you're gonna have that religious religiosity and religious undertones. But
you also have to enjoy spending minutes on the ground in the arms of another man to be an MMA fighter.
You have,
or woman, if you're
comfortable in your sexuality.
Now, were you a wrestler, a boxer? How did you? At some point, you were probably into one of those, or were you a jiu-jitsu guy yourself?
Everything actually. I started boxing. I started boxing when I was 6 years old, and then I did traditional martial arts from the time I was 12 to the time I was 21. I did Kempo and Wing Chun and traditional karate, kung fu stuff. And then I wrestled a little over 2 years. I was never very good, and I broke my arm in one year season, which is why I only was there for a half season. I wrestled, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, and it was okay. And then I did Muay Thai, kickboxing. I did Jeet Kune Do, and then I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in '96, and I just kind of started putting it all together and doing MMA before it was called MMA, back in like the early 2000s, and just kind of developed my own thing, and eventually MMA became what it was, and I've kind of been involved since the beginning. But yeah, I just like all. I originally got into boxing because I saw Rocky.
Right. Adrian. Ian Harris, atheist comedian. Yeah. Thank you so much. What's coming up for you? People have a website they can go to. Where's your next show? Give us a few minutes of self-promotion.
Oh, sure. Well, I have my first hour TV special. It's been out for about a couple years now. It's called Critical and Thinking. It's on all the various VOD platforms like Hulu and Google Play, Amazon, iTunes, all the places where you can rent and download movies. It's on there, Critical and Thinking. And then in October, I'm taping my second special. It's going to be called Extraordinary. And I'm taping that hopefully for Netflix, but nothing's done until it's finished and they look at it. But that's where it's hopefully going, Netflix. But it's called Extraordinary, and that'll be out early 2017. And other than that, find me. So if you're in the Santa Cruz area, Santa Cruz, California, October 16th, I'll be taping that special. You can come to the live taping of it. Other than that, I'm on just all the social media, Twitter and Facebook and all that. And my handle is @Comediocre. It's just like mediocre with a yes,
Comediocre.
It's Comediocre.
I like it.
Yeah.
I'm a word jammer guy.
He's all over YouTube too. A quick search brought up a bunch of stuff.
Outstanding. Well, thanks for joining us, man. We really appreciate you taking out the time, and keep up the great work.
Absolutely. Thank you guys.
Excellent.
Well, cool.
Enjoy the rest.
Thanks, guys. It was fun.
You got it.
Appreciate
Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
All right, take care.
Take it easy.
Hey, you too. Take care.
Bye.
See you guys.
Join us next week for David DiValerio, local professor here and expert in Buddhist studies. And we've got some interesting thoughts there. So look forward to that and join us again next week for that. Thank you, Brian, again. And on behalf of the entire team, have a great weekend. Bye. The Mythicist Milwaukee Show is brought to you by Mythicist Milwaukee. Producer Sean Frasek. Associate producer Melanie Lawson. Engineer Jason Lawson. Mythmeister Antonio Blandone. Researcher Kristen Whitaker-Hood. Closing theme written and performed by Shelley Siegel. On behalf of co-host Brian Edward and the entire team, I'm Rob Moore reminding you to keep it safe and keep it secular.